The lecture hall aboard the Xeno-Ark shimmered like a cathedral of starlight, its dome ceiling awash with holographic constellations that pulsed faintly against the matte black walls. Rows of tiered seats curved upward, packed with alien students feathered, scaled, or glistening with bioluminescent slime, their voices a low hum of clicks, chirps, and modulated drones. The air hung heavy with a tang of recycled oxygen and the faint electric buzz of translator implants working overtime. At the hall's center, a circular platform glowed under soft blue light, and there stood High Marshal Zarkhul Vren, a colossus of chitin and arrogance. 8 feet of Krellix muscle loomed over the room, his crimson eyes glinting like embers in a dying fire. His armor-jagged plates of natural exoskeleton caught the light, casting sharp shadows across the floor. Doctor. Riley Voss slouched in the third row, arms crossed, her weary frame dwarfed by the alien beside her, a tentacled thing that smelled faintly of ozone. Her auburn hair stuck out in a messy halo, and her lips pressed into a thin line. As Zarkhul's gravelly voice rolled through the chamber. Earth, he sneered, mandibles clicking with disdain. A mudball of weaklings. Your species scrabbles in the dirt, unworthy of the Galactic Concord's notice. He raised a clawed hand, gesturing to a hollow projection of Earth spinning, lazily a blue speck against the vastness of space. No weapon of yours could challenge a Krellix warrior. You're an afterthought, tolerated only by charity. The room rippled with alien laughter, high-pitched trills, and guttural snorts. Riley's jaw tightened, her hazel eyes narrowing the slits. She'd been on the station for 8 months, Earth's lone xenobiologist, swallowing snide remarks from beings who saw humans as primitive pets. Her fingers twitched against her jacket, brushing the hidden pocket where a sealed vial hummed faintly against her ribs. She'd smuggled it past security 2 weeks ago, a little piece of home no one. Not yet. Beside her, Tick's liqueur shifted uncomfortably, her feathery frame quivering. The third-year student's wide eyes flicked between Riley and Zarkhul, her voice a nervous chirp through the translator. He's just posturing, right? You're not going to. Watch me, Riley muttered, her smirk sharp as a blade. Zarkhul's lecture droned on, his claws tracing the air as he boasted of Krellix. Conquest's planets cracked open like eggs, fleets reduced to ash. Riley's patience frayed with every word, the heat of her pride simmering beneath. She'd had enough. Pushing to her feet, she stepped into the aisle, her boots thudding against the room hushed, 100 alien gazes snapping to her. Hi, Marshal, she called, voice cutting through the silence like a snap. You're wrong. Zarkhul's head swiveled, his eyes locking onto her with predatory focus. A human dares interrupt, his mandibles flared, a low growl rumbling from his. Riley didn't flinch. She reached into her pocket, pulling out the vial, a slim cylinder of reinforced glass, no bigger than her thumb. Inside, a black speck shifted, legs curling against the confines. You say no human weapon can touch you. I say this little guy drops you faster than your ego can handle. A beat of silence stretched, taut as a bowstring. Then Zarkhul laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. A speck. You just, Earthling. Riley popped the vial's cap with a flick of her thumb, holding it up. Australian funnel web spider. 1 bite, and you're done. Care to test it? The room erupted murmurs, gasps, a few nervous trills. Tixla's feathers puffed out, her chirp a squeak. Riley, that's insane. From the back, Professor Grass' tentacles curled with delight, his dry voice drifting over. Oh, I like her. Zarkhul's laughter died, his eyes narrowing. You challenge me with that. He stepped closer, towering over her. Name your terms. Riley met his gaze, unflinching. A duel. You win. Earth's a joke. I win. You eat your words. Deal. His claws flexed. Deal. The hall buzzed, tension crackling like static. Riley's smirk widened. Game on. The experimental lab on the Xeno-Ark was a sterile fortress of glass and steel. Its walls reinforced with shimmering energy fields that hummed faintly in them. A circular arena dominated the chamber, its floor a matte gray slab scuffed from Years of alien experiments gone awry. Overhead, viewing platforms buzz with students pressing against the railings. Their alien faces scaled, feathered, or slick with mucus lit by the flickering glow of holocams broadcasting live across the galactic Concord network. The air crackled with anticipation, thick with a metallic tang of machinery, and the sour edge of nervous sweat. Doctor. Riley Voss stood at the arena's edge, her boots planted firm, the vial cradled in her palm like a loaded gun. Across from her, High Marshal Zarkhul Vren loomed, his chitin armored bulk, casting a shadow that swallowed half the floor. His crimson eyes burned with disdain, mandibles twitching as he flexed claws the size of kitchen knives. Begin, he rumbled, voice like gravel scraped over iron. Riley flicked the vial open with a practiced twist, tipping it gently. A black speck tumbled out. The Australian funnel web spider, no bigger than a dime, landed on the floor with a whisper of legs. It skittered forward, a blur of midnight against the gray, its tiny fang glinting under the harsh lights. Alien gasps rippled through the crowd. Some recoiled, others leaned closer, their translators buzzing with disbelief. Zarkhul snorted, a plume of hot breath gusting from his nostrils. Pathetic, he lunged, claws slashing downward in a blur of lethal intent, aiming to crush the spider into oblivion. The crowd held its breath, but the spider darted aside, impossibly fast, a shadow streaking across the floor. Zarkhul's claws gouged the steel, sparks flying as he roared, pivoting to strike. The spider zigzagged, a dancer evading a clumsy giant, then lunged upward, sinking its fangs into the meat of his ankle just above the armor's edge. A bellow tore from Zarkhul's throat, raw and guttural, echoing off the glass. He staggered back, crimson eyes widening as he swatted at his leg. A sting. You think this? His words cut off as his knee buckled, the massive limb trembling like a felled tree. Pain flashed across his face, sharp and unbidden, but he forced a laugh. Guttural and defiant. A child's praying. Riley's smirk didn't waver. She crossed her arms, leaning against the arena railing. Give it a sec, big guy. Beside her, Tixliquor peeked from behind a console. Feathers puffed in a frantic halo. It's working, she chirped, voice trembling with awe. The venom is neurotoxic, right? Shuts down their systems. Riley nodded, eyes locked on Zarkhul. Faster than you believe. Professor Grask, perched on a lab stool, twirled a tentacle absently, his gravelly voice cutting through the tension. Fascinating venom profile. Krellix physiology is all brute force bed. It's hitting his nerves like a freight train. His bulbous eyes gleamed with mischief as Zarkhul swayed, claws scraping the floor for balance. Then it happened. The spider, done with its bite, skittered toward the arena's edge, a black dart. It reached the wall, legs probing, and vanished into a ventilation grate with a heartbeat of silence. Then alarm shrieked, red lights bathing the lab, and a containment breach. A synthetic voice blared, reverberating through the crowd erupted, students scrambling over each other, shrieking about Earth's assassin loose in the station. Riley's smirk faltered. Oh, crap, she bolted for the lab controls, Tixla hot on her heels, feathered, shedding in a frantic trail. Grass slid off his stool, muttering, this just got interesting, as he waddled. Beyond the glass, Zarkhul roared again, clutching his leg as venom surged. His honor guard hulking Krellix in spiked armor burst through the lab doors. Plasma rifles humming to life, their crimson eyes locked on Riley. Human, one bellowed, leveling his weapon. You'll pay for this. Riley ducked behind a console as a plasma bolt seared past, scorching the inches from her head. Guess they don't like losing to a bug, she quipped, voice steady despite the Tixla squeaked, diving beside her, while grass tentacles flailed, knocking over a tray of tools. Zarkhul's roar shook the room, his massive frame lurching toward the vent, venom-addled and furious. The duel was over. The war had just begun. The Xeno-Ark shuddered as chaos swallowed it whole, the sterile corridors erupting into a cacophony of shrieks, clattering claws, and the wail of alarms. painting the walls in staccato bursts of red. The air buzzed with static, thick with the acrid scent of scorched metal and the sour tang of alien panic. Doctor. Riley Voss sprinted through the lower deck, her boots pounding against the slick floor, the stolen lab console's thermal scanner clutched in her hand. Beside her, ticks liquor flapped in a frantic blur of feathers, her chirps bouncing off the curved walls. It's in the vents. The vents, Riley. What do we do? Find it before it finds someone else. Riley shot back, her voice taut, but steady, eyes flicking to the scanner's flickering display. A tiny heat signature blinked erratically, skittering through the stations. Behind them, Professor Grask waddled at a surprising clip, tentacles slapping the floor, his gravelly mutter cutting through the din. Should have sealed those ducts years ago. Sloppy engineering. The station's labyrinthine halls twisted ahead, bioluminescent panels pulsing like a heartbeat gone haywire. Alien students flooded the corridors, some scuttled on spindly legs, others slithered, leaving trails of slime as they fled. A towering reptilian barreled past, bellowing through its translator, Earth's unleashed a planetary assassin. Riley smirked despite the chaos, ducking under a low-hanging conduit. They're not wrong. A high-pitched whine sliced the air security drones, sleek orbs of gunmetal, gray, dropped from ceiling hatches, their stun beams crackling like bottled. One swiveled toward Riley, its lens glinting, and fired. She dove, rolling behind a bulkhead as the bolt seared the floor, leaving a seriously, she growled, popping up to grab the drone mid-flight. Her fingers dug into its casing, muscle straining as she wrestled it, redirecting its beam into the ceiling. Sparks rained down, and Tixley yelped, feathers puffing into a cloud. Nice catch, Graz called, dodging a ricochet with a tentacle flick. But we've got bigger problems. The lab doors ahead blasted open with a hiss, and Zarkhul's honor guard stormed. And 5 Krellix warriors, their spiked armor glinting under the flickering lights, plasma rifles humming with lethal intent. Crimson eyes locked on Riley, their leader snarling through jagged mandibles. Human, your treachery ends here. A bolt lanced toward her, sizzling past her ear to meld a wall panel in the slag. She ducked behind a crate, heart pounding but grinned sharp. Guess they don't like losing to a bug. Tixla scrambled beside her, clutching a data pad, her voice a frantic trill. They think you planned this. The spider is a diplomatic incident now. Riley peeked over the crate, dodging another plasma burst that shattered a nearby conduit, venting steam into the good. Let's make it a memorable one. The guards advanced, boots clanging like war drums, rifles spitting fire in. Riley darted left, dragging Tixla with her, the scanner slipping in her sweaty. Grask lagged behind, tentacles flailing as he knocked over a stack of lab. Cylinder's glass shattered, and a plume of green vapor billowed, momentarily blinding the guards. Oops, he deadpanned, waddling faster. That'll slow them. A deeper whir cut through the chaos. Zarkhul himself staggered from the lab, his massive frame swaying like a storm-battered cliff. Venom coursed through him, his ankles swollen and blackening, but his eyes gleamed with feverish delirium. He lurched toward a vent grate, claws scraping the wall, and dropped to his knees with a bone-rattling thud. Worthy overlord, he bellowed, voice slurring as he pressed his forehead to the floor, bowing to the empty grate. I serve the tiny conqueror. The holocams overhead whirred, beaming the scene live across the Concord. Network Zarkhul, High Marshal of the Krellix Dominion, groveling to an invisible. Alien gasps turned the stunned silence, then a few choke laughs from the viewing. Riley froze mid-sprint, staring. You've got to be kidding me. Tixla's feathers flattened, her chirp a mix of the venom it's hallucinogenic. Graz squeezed a laugh, dodging a stray plasma bolt. Oh, this is better than I had hoped. His nervous system's a mess textbook neurotoxin overload. Another guard fired, the bolt grazing his tentacle, and he yelped, less science, more running. Riley snapped back to focus, shoving Tixla toward a side passage. The guards regrouped, their rifles tracking her through the steam. But Zarkhul's delirium slowed them as roars of all hail echoed, throwing off their aim. She clutched the scanner tighter, the spider's blip darting deeper into the... This just got out of hand, she muttered, ducking as a bolt seared overhead. The Xeno-Ark trembled, its pristine aura unraveling. Riley's grin returned, fierce and wild. Out of hand was exactly where she thrived. The Xeno-Ark's lower decks pulsed with anarchy, its corridors a snarl of flickering lights and hissing steam vents that spat gouts of scalding mist into. The metallic tang of burnt circuits mingled with a sour reek of alien fear, the station groaning under the weight of its own unraveling. Doctor. Riley Voss crouched behind a toppled storage crate, her breath sharpened. Shallow, the thermal scanner trembling in her grip. Its screen glowed faintly, the first spider's heat signature a darting red blip, weaving through the ventilation maze. Beside her, Tixla were huddled, feathers shedding in a frantic flurry, her chirps barely audible over the wail of alarms. We lost it, Riley. It's gone. Not yet, Riley muttered, her voice a low growl of determination. She wiped sweat from her brow, smearing a streak of soot across her freckled. Her hazel eyes flicked up as Professor Graz stumbled into view, his squat frame wheezing, tentacles dragging like wet ropes. Lost one spider, he panted, but we've got... A shrill yelp cut him off. Graz flailed, his bulbous eyes widening as a black speck leapt from his tangled tentacles. A second Australian funnel web spider, its legs a blur of menace. It skittered across his slimy skin, a tiny nightmare unchained. Eight-leg doom, he shrieked, thrashing like a man possessed, tentacles slapping the walls in a frantic dance. The spider vaulted off, landing on the floor with a faint tap, and bolted toward. Riley's jaw dropped, her smirk twisting into disbelief. To spiders. Two, Tixla's feathers puffed into a chaotic halo, her chirp a strangled squeak. You didn't tell me there were two. Why would you bring two? Riley shrugged, dodging a falling chunk of ceiling tile as the station quaked. Earth doesn't mess around, Tix. Backup's a habit. The absurdity hit like a punchline, but there was no time to laugh. Heavy boots thundered closer Zarkhul's honor guard, their spiked armor glinting. Through the haze, plasma rifles spitting bolts that seared the air. Riley yanked Tixla down as a shot blasted the crate, splintering it into smoking. Move, she barked, shoving her assistant toward a narrow passageway lined with. Graz waddled after them, still swatting at phantom spiders, his voice a dry. This is why I don't field work. The second spider darted ahead, a black streak against the chaos, and skittered onto a Krellix guard mid-charge. The warrior 7 feet of muscle and fury roared, swinging his rifle like a club. But the spider was faster. It sank its fangs into his wrist, venom pumping like liquid fire. He froze, eyes widening, then collapsed in a twitching heap, his armor clanging. Riley seized the moment, lunging for his dropped plasma rifle. Her fingers closed around the grip, the weapon humming hot in her hands. One down, she quipped, spinning to aim at a vent grate overhead. She fired a searing bolt lanced out, melting the grate's edge, but the first spider skittered deeper, unscathed. Damn it, she growled, ducking as another guard returned fire, plasma splashing against the wall in a molten spray. Tixla yelped, scrambling behind a conduit, her data pad sparking from a near. They're everywhere, she cried, feathers drifting like snow in the chaos. Riley pivoted, squeezing off a shot that caught a guard's shoulder, sending him sprawling with a guttural scream. The rifle's recoil jolted her arm, but her grin was feral, adrenaline singing in. Stay with me, Tix. She hauled the feathery alien up, dragging her toward a flickering corridor as Graz trailed, muttering, should have brought a net. The guards regrouped, their crimson eyes glowing through the steam, rifles tracking the trio's frantic sprint. A bolt grazed Riley's jacket, singeing the fabric. She hissed, shoving Tixla ahead as the passage narrowed, pipes rattling overhead. The second spider reappeared, skittering along the wall, a tiny shadow of doom. Grass pointed, tentacles flailing. There! It's though. Blast it. The spider leapt again, vanishing into the shadows, leaving. Riley's scanner beeped a faint blip from the first spider, deeper in the... They're splitting up, she said, voice tight but steady. Another plasma bolt seared past, shattering a conduit. Steam erupted, scalding her arm, but she didn't flinch. She fired back, the rifles hum a steady pulse, pinning the guards behind her. Guess we're in it now. Tixla's chirp was a shaky laugh. You think, Grass wheezed, dodging a ricochet. This is why humans are insane and brilliant. The corridor trembled, the guards' roars echoing closer. Riley's grip tightened on the rifle, her smirk returning like a battle flag. Insane or not, she wasn't done yet. The Xeno-Ark's lower decks were a crucible of chaos, a warren of shadowed corridors where the air thrummed with a groan of strained metal and the acrid sting of plasma-burnt steel. Emergency lights flickered, casting jagged pools of crimson across the floor. Their stuttering glow mirrored in the sweat-slicked face of Dr. Riley Voss. She crouched behind a ruptured conduit, its jagged edges biting into her palm as she gripped the stolen plasma rifle, its barrel still warm from her last shot. The thermal scanner lay discarded beside her, its cracked screen dark useless, now that the spiders had vanished into the station's labyrinthine depths. Tixla were pressed against her side, feathers trembling, her wide eyes darting. They're closing in, Riley, she chirped, voice cracking as a distant clang echoed boots, claws, the relentless march of Zarkhul's honor guard. Professor Grass slumped nearby, tentacles splayed across a crate, his wheezer. I'd say we're out of options, he muttered, but you humans thrive on this nonsense, don't you? Riley's smirk was a razor's edge, her hazel eyes glinting with defiance. Damn right we do. She peeked around the conduit, catching the glint of spiked armor through the steam through Krellix warriors, their crimson eyes burning. Plasma rifles humming with lethal intent. The corridor narrowed ahead, a bottleneck of pipes and flickering panels, giving her a slim shot at holding them off. She hefted the rifle, its weight a familiar anchor. Tix, Grass, stay low. We've got this. A skittering sound cut through the tension, a faint tap of tiny legs. Riley's breath hitched as the first spider reappeared, a black speck darting from a vent overhead. It scuttled across the floor, a shadow of doom, and lunged at the lead guard. The Krellix roared, claws slashing, but the spider was a blur. Its fangs sank into his thigh, venom flashing through his system like lightning. He staggered, eyes rolling back, and collapsed in a twitching heap, armor clanging like a dropped anvil. Holy, Tixla squeaked, feathers puffing. It's back. Riley seized the moment, popping up to fire a plasma bolt that seared through the steam, catching the second guard's shoulder. He spun, howling, his rifle clattering as he hit the deck. The third guard charged, a mountain of chitin and fury, his weapon spitting a volley that scorched the conduit inches from Riley's head. She ducked, sparks raining, and snapped back with a quip. Guess size doesn't matter after all. Another shot, his knee buckled, and he crashed forward, momentum slamming him into a pipe with a wet crunch. The corridor fell silent, save for the hiss of leaking steam and Grask's precision over power, he said, tentacle nudging the scanner aside. Textbook human, but the quiet shattered. A deeper roar rolled through the haze. Zarkhul Vren stumbled into view, his massive frame swaying, venom-addled, and his ankle was a blackened ruin, his crimson eyes glazed, but he moved with feverish purpose, claws dragging gouges in the walls. Tiny conquerors, he bellowed, voice slurring into delirium. I serve you. Riley stared, rifle lowering a fraction. You've got to be kidding me. Tixla's chirp was a nervous giggle. He's still hallucinating. Grass snorted, Krellix pride, meet Earth's poison match made in chaos. Zarkhul lurched toward them, claws slashing at phantoms, his roar shaking the... Riley snapped the rifle up, But Tixla darted forward, data pad in hand. Wait, she tapped frantically, overriding a ceiling drone the orb word to life. Its stun beam crackling as it swiveled towards Zarkhul. Got it, she chirped, triumphant, and the beam lanced out, striking his chest. He froze, trembling, then toppled like a felled oak, armor crashing in a. His eyes fluttered shut, a final mutter escaping, all hail. Riley blinked, then grinned, clapping Tixla's shoulder. Nice one, kid. The feathery alien beam, feathers settling. I did it. Graz called himself up, brushing off a tentacle. And I didn't even have to lift a limb. Stellar teamwork. Footsteps echoed station security, finally arriving, their sleek uniform pristine against the wreckage. A human officer stepped forward, stun baton in hand, eyeing the sprawled Krellix and the unconscious Zarkhul. Doctor, Voss, he asked, voice clipped. What the hell happened? Riley stood, brushing soot from her jacket, plasma rifle dangling casually. Just proved a point, she said, nodding at Zarkhul. Earth 2, Krellix 0. The officer's brow furrowed, but he waved his team in. Medics rushing to the fallen High Marshal. The holocams overhead whirred, their feet still live across the Concord, alien. Viewers gape, the image of Zarkhul bowing to nothing searing into their minds. Riley retrieved the scanner. It screamed dead, but its job done. The spiders, both of them, had vanished into the vents, ghosts of Earths. She glanced at Tixla, then grasped, her smirk softening. Guess we stirred the pot, Graz chuckled, tentacle curling, and cooked something deliciously chaotic. The security team secured the area, dragging the guards away, but Riley's gaze lingered on Zarkhul's prone form. The station trembled faintly, its pristine order shattered, yet she felt a. Humanity's mark was etched in venom and grit, small, scrappy, and unstoppable. The lecture hall aboard the Xeno-Ark had shed its earlier frenzy, the air settling into a brittle stillness that clung to the domed ceiling like a held. Holographic constellations flickered faintly overhead, their glow dimmed by the haze of lingering smoke and the faint hum of strained ventilation clearing the last traces of chaos. The tiered seats stood half empty, alien students trickling back and hushed. Clusters feathered heads bowed, scaled limbs twitching, their translators buzzing with subdued murmurs. Doctor. Riley Voss leaned against a railing near the platform, her weary frame slouched, but unbowed, a fresh bandage taped over a plasma burn on her forearm. Her auburn hair hung in sweaty clumps, and her smirk was a quiet ember, still. Tixla were perched beside her, feathers finally smoothing into a semblance of calm, her wide eyes glinting with a mix of exhaustion and pride. We survived, she chirped softly, clutching her cracked data pad like a trophy. I can't believe we survived. Riley nudged her with an elbow, grin widening. Told you we'd make it, kid. Earth doesn't go down easy. Across the hall, Professor Grask lounged on a stool, tentacles draped lazily over a console, his gravelly voice drifting over. I'll need a bigger lab after this. And hazard pay. Riley snorted, her gaze sweeping the room. The platform where Zarkhul Vren had boasted hours ago was now a staging ground. For medics, human and alien alike, hauling his massive frame onto it. The High Marshal's chitin armor glinted dully, his crimson eyes half open, muttering delirious fragments about tiny conquerors as they carted him off. The holocams had gone dark, but their feed lingered in the galaxies. Memories Zarkhul bowing to a vent. A Krellix titan fell by a spider no one could. Riley's lips twitched. Worth it. Footsteps echoed, crisp and deliberate. A Concord representative approached, a slender figure in a sleek gray uniform, his translucent skin shimmering faintly under the lights. His voice was clipped, formal, but carried a grudging weight. Dr. Voss. That was unorthodox. Effective, but unorthodox. Riley straightened, brushing soot from her jacket. That's us, she said, meeting his gaze. Earth doesn't play by your rules, we make our own. The rep studied her, then inclined his head, a rare nod from the Concord's rigid. Your point's been made. The council's already debating Earth status. This, he gestured vaguely at the wrecked hull, won't be forgotten. He turned away, leaving Riley staring after him, a flicker of something warm sparking in. Respect, hard won, and jagged edged. Later, aboard her shuttle docked at the Xeno-Ark's bay, Riley settled into the pilot's seat, the hum of the engines a steady pulse beneath her boots. The viewport framed the station's gleaming silhouette against the void, its pristine curves marred by scorch marks and flickering light scars of her. She tapped a holo feed on the console, alien chatter scrolling across the screen. In a dozen languages. Humans are reckless, one read. But they fight like cornered beasts, another countered. A third. Don't underestimate the small stuff. Riley's smirk softened into a faint smile, her fingers brushing the bandage on her arm. Tixla's voice crackled through the comm, still on the station. Riley, they're calling you a hero. Well, some are. Others want you banned. Riley chuckled, leaning back. Let him squawk. We shook their cage, that's what counts. Grass dry rasp followed. And I've got a paper to write. Arachnid diplomacy. A case study. You're welcome. She laughed outright. Sound rough but genuine. The shuttle's engines flared, pulling away from the bay, and the Xeno-Ark shrank. Into the distance, a silver speck swallowed by the endless black. Riley's gaze lingered on the stars, their cold light stretching into infinity. Earth was out there. A blue dot no one here had taken seriously until today. To spiders, a handful of grit and a whole lot of nerve had shifted the scales. The Concord might not love humanity, but they damn well respect it now. Don't underestimate the small stuff, she murmured, her voice a quiet valor. To the hum of the reactor. The void felt a little less vast, Earth's scrappy shadow stretching a little. Riley flipped the comm off, set the course for home, and let the stars carry her.